so that you can help yourself, bending a knee down to the floor, then the other one slowly. Use your hands, don't fall, just slowly sit and roll over onto your back. Now, in the lessons with the people with stroke, in the trial at home, this was a day of high drama, and one of the most empowering days that's happened. So from talking to Inez, the PhD student who's not a Feldy, and then Margaret who is, this day was mammoth because people really felt very, very fearful. Some of them hadn't been on the floor since their stroke, and they all got down on the floor and all got back up again successfully. They experienced success, and now they've got their getting onto the floor certificate. And it's made a big difference. So we're wondering how we're going to capture that. We think we just have to do some narratives to capture that experience for them. So I think I made this point last week. We cannot, we are in danger of underestimating the power of a simple function like that, how revolutionary and how much that reopens, and I use that word very clearly, reopens people's worlds. So if we're fearful of it, we're probably diminishing people. And of course, Margaret, when you meet her, is not scared of anything. Okay. So you're lying on your back or lying in your bed. Now, for you guys, if you do this in your bed, you'll notice you will notice that you do not notice as much because the bed absorbs, it swallows a whole lot of sensory feedback because it's so soft and squishy. Okay. Now interlace your fingers, and this means joining your fingers, joining your hands, and put them behind your head. Put your interlaced fingers behind your head. And now very slowly, gently, start to lift your head a little bit and do that several times. He doesn't invite them to bend their knees. If you're teaching this class for the first time and you don't know the folk and they're not used to lying flat on their back, lying flat on their back with their legs out straight is probably quite uncomfortable for about 2/3 of the group in their lower back. So you might need to modify it, but he doesn't. So then he says it's a minute movement, just what's comfortable to do. Your neck may feel a little stiff. You may have trouble in the back, or you may be uncomfortable elsewhere. So there's no use in straining rather. Any strain will just make things worse, while what we do will make you feel better. So that's his very reassuring kind of language. But he does use the S word. In our training, we weren't allowed to use the S word, which is stiff. It was verboten. Now notice that as you continue to lift your head a little tiny bit, you'll feel that both elbows come a little bit more towards each other as you lift. And then as you completely lower your head, your elbows widen back out a little bit again. And just notice that. And now notice what's happening to your breathing as you lift the head. Do you breathe in as you're lifting and out when you're lowering? Or do you breathe out when you're lifting and in when you're lowering? Try both. So lift and breathe in, lower and breathe out. And then breathe out as you lift and in when you lower. Maybe you weren't breathing at all. Maybe you were just holding your breath. So what feels easier? Good, rest when you need to. If it's a strain to have your arms up like this, you can rest anytime you like. Good, and then bring your hands back, interlace your fingers behind your head. And now as you begin to lift your head a little bit, notice, what do your eyes do? As you lift your head, where do your eyes go? Can you pay attention to what your eyes are doing? So for most people, as you lift your head, your eyes will look a little bit down towards your feet. And as your head goes back to the floor, your eyes look more towards the ceiling. So is that true for you? Now, some of you got your eyes closed, so it might be that this is happening behind closed doors, as it were. So you can try both ways, with your eyes open and your eyes closed. And does that make sense to you, that as you lift your head up, you really look to your feet, and as you lower your head, your eyes go back towards the ceiling? And if you want to kind of evaluate the influence of the movement of the eyes makes on this, try not moving your eyes so the eyes just stay fixed. You could even be adventurous and do the opposite. You could make your eyes go up to the ceiling as your head goes to the feet. Now, he doesn't do that, but I think, you can make it a bit more obvious. Good, rest with your arms down by your side. And what do you notice as you're lying there? Let's pay some particular attention to your breathing. So in the sitting lesson, you noticed whether you were breathing or not easily in different parts of the movement. Now we're going to pay a bit of attention to where you're breathing as you're lying there. So to help work out where you're breathing, put one hand on your breastbone, just below your throat, so that maybe your right hand, let's all do it the same way, and then your left hand on your belly, just below your belly button. And find a way that your hands can rest there lightly. And now continue to breathe and notice what parts of you move as you're breathing. So that's the first question, is does the area under your right hand, so it's the upper chest, and your lower belly, that's the left hand, do both of those areas move or only one of those areas? And when you've worked out if they move or not, what's the order in which they move? Do both areas move at the same time, or does one move first and then the other? Which goes first? Which goes second? Maybe one's not moving at all. What would it take for both areas to move? Good, leave it. Rest for a moment with your arms long by your sides. Did having your hands on your chest and your belly change your breathing in some way? Now that they're not touching anymore, what do you notice with your breathing? Okay, now interlace your fingers and put your hands behind your head again. And this time bend your knees up so that your feet are standing. Now, just as an aside, because this is for elderly citizens, he actually goes through quite a spiel about how that you might need to use your hands to help each knee come up to standing by hooking under the thigh, which to my mind is fairly hard work, but it's a possibility. And certainly if you work with people with stroke, the leg that's most affected by the stroke can be quite hard to lift up and bend. So if you're teaching this in a class situation with someone, do be prepared to help them find a way to bring their legs up. And then, of course, remind them that their knees are a little bit apart and their feet are a little bit apart, at about the same distance between the knees and the feet. And it's that Goldilocks kind of not too wide and not too narrow sort of thing. So that could take quite a while to set up in a de novo class. Okay, now with your knees up and your feet standing, in your hands behind your head, lift your head up a little bit this time, in this position. And is it different with your knees bent up than when they were out long or not? Can you tell a difference or not? Now, the next time that you lift your head up, have this quiet intention that your right knee and your right elbow are going to come a little closer together. So that would mean that possibly your right foot has to lift off the floor. So they don't have to touch, but it's like they have this idea that maybe at some point they could touch. They're going in the same direction. So what has to happen, the way you lift your head, that you can coordinate the right knee and the right elbow coming a little bit towards each other, and then they come back to the floor. So your head comes back to the floor, your elbows widen back out again, and your foot comes back to the floor. And then you kind of fold up a little bit. Now, if you can't do this, of course, you imagine it. So if this leg doesn't want to lift off, you can simply lie there quietly and imagine the front of the hip closing as the right knee comes up towards the chest, towards the right elbow, and the right elbow comes away from the floor and moves up towards the ceiling and down towards the left knee, the right knee. So the right elbow is going in the direction of the right knee, and the right knee is going in the direction of the right elbow. And make sure when you come back fully so that your foot's on the floor and your head's on the floor. Good. One more lift and then leave it, rest. You can keep your legs standing if that's comfortable and have your arms down by your side. And take a moment to notice how your breathing is after that funny little movement, where you are not only lifting your head, but having a bit of a bias towards the right side of you. So if I ask what part of your body is breathing, remember we've already had a little experience of the chest moving under the hand and the belly moving under the hand or not. What's happening now? Is it changed in the chest? Is it changed in the abdomen? Or both? Or neither? Now, you are all breathing because you're all alive, So something is moving. The question is whether you can detect it or not. That's what we're practicing. Can you tell where you're breathing? And of course, your breathing might be so shallow that it's really hard to feel. However, there is still movement there. It just means you're currently not in a position to detect it. That's what you're going to get better at. He says, you may be so stiff you can't feel it. All that will be remedied, improved from lesson to lesson. So just take it easy. And again, the stiff word, bit leading anyway. Good. Now, listening to your breathing, bring your fingers interlaced behind your head again. And now for people who have a bit of a pain in their shoulders and it's hard to get their arms up, again, you can simply imagine it.